Hi everyone, today we're going to 3D model a stool for our Cyberpunk diner. You may have seen some of the episodes previously where we had 3D modeled other items. Today we're 3D modeling a stool for the counter, so I really hope you enjoy this tutorial.
Hey everyone! So if you remember last time, we made some plates, some cups, and some french fries, this booth. We basically 3D modeled everything in here in previous episodes as a part of the Cyber Diner tutorial. You get to see a little bit of my process behind this. I thought that it would be fun for this one to 3D model some stools for a countertop. You'll notice these ones are actually available in the asset browser. They're that tulip shape that was really famous and well known in the 1950s. Um, and you can access that by going up to Window, Asset Browser, and you can just search for stool in here and see the bar stool that I had grabbed. But I thought that it would be fun to 3D model our own today in case if you want to create your own custom stool for your place, for your personal cyber diner that you might be working on. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up a new file. You can hit Control F to open up your project settings, and you can choose to work in centimeters, or if you're an American like me, you can choose inches. And if you find it helpful for scale, you can even use one of the built-in assets as a reference while you're 3D modeling. What I strongly suggest, though, if you want your dimensions to be accurate to what would be ergonomic and seen in the real world in a real chair, even though our world is virtual that we're going to be creating today, it's good to have an understanding of how things are created in the real world when you 3D model them, because that will help you make a world that's more believable as you progress in your projects. I'd like to just pull over the screen here. You can see that there are standardized dimensions of a stool. You can see for chair height, counter height, bar height, and spectator height. So these are all standardized. Someone has already gone out and done studies on what the most comfortable chair height is for a person, given the various heights of people and dimensions of people, and had taken all of that data into account and come up with these standards. So you don't need to do this research yourself. It's on the internet. But I strongly suggest you follow one of these. It'll give you counter heights and different heights for stools, and that'll give you a reference. I'm going to use these dimensions in order to create a bounding box, so I'm going to drop in a cube. If you'd like to adjust your units, you can also do this under Preferences and navigate down to Units. For right now, I'm going to change this to inches. So for right now, I'm going to go with 33 inches in the Y direction, according to these standards that I have on my other screen right now. And then you can even look up the dimensions for chair width and what would be comfortable. For comfort, I think that what I'll do is I'll go with 20 inches by 20 inches. And this will just be a good reference for as we work. And if you'd like to snap to your grid, you can turn that on in here with this right here, modeling settings. And with that, you'll see we snap to the center and can have that lined up as such. I'm going to right click on this, and then I'm going to choose Render Tags, Display, and I'm going to adjust the display here. Instead of using garage shading, I just want to use lines for right now, because this is just going to be used as a bounding box so that we know we're 3D modeling the correct dimensions. And then I'm also going to add a rigging tag, a protection tag, and each one of these check marks will be telling Cinema 4D that we will not be able to adjust the position, rotation, or scale of this cube by accident. We'd have to uncheck these in order to move it. So right now, the gizmo for this is grayed out. We can't move it, which is handy for 3D modeling if you don't want to accidentally move something. And this is a great start. And what I'll do next is I want to give this chair some legs. So I'm going to drop in a cylinder for right now. And I'll drop this within a cloner. I'd like to make sure that these legs are in a radial formation, so I'm going to change this from grid to radial. And we don't need 5 legs, we only need 4 or 3 depending on your preference of what kind of stool you'd like to make. I'm going to go ahead with 3, and then you can adjust the radius. And you can see this better from the top view perhaps. But you can see the radius of our legs from the top view. And we can get this pretty close to our bounding box. Going to move this up some. So it lines up a little bit better here. And something else we can do is we can turn on enable axes. Make this editable. And once we make it editable, we can actually rotate these legs some. And we can rotate them inwards. It's a little bit easier to see in perspective view or from top view when you rotate in these legs if they're lining up correctly. So this is a really great start. And now we have 3 very nice legs for putting a seat on and also creating a place for our feet to rest. And you can look up the dimensions of at about what height your feet should rest as well. With that said, I'm going to duplicate this, and I'd much rather like to use this one to create a place for our legs to rest on the stool. I'm going to turn off the snap for right now. If you hold down shift, you can snap to different degrees, even with the snap off. I'm creating a second bounding box so that I can make sure that I line up these legs correctly with where, I'm creating another bounding box so that I can line up where someone's feet would rest with the correct height. So I'm creating it as a reference. So now we have the basis of a very nice simple stool, and we have a place for someone's feet to rest. From here I'm going to add in a plane. And move this up some. So now we have this plane starting at 33 inches up, which is a great start. But maybe we want to form the seat a little bit more so that it's more comfortable to sit on. So what I'll do is I'll make this plane editable. Make sure that I have the number of segments that I like. I'm going to turn on garage shading with lines. I feel like this is a good number to start off with. And then I'm going to make this editable. From here I can use UL, which brings up all the selection keys, and then you can see L is for loop, so that'll allow us to select loops. And I'll go into edge mode so that I can select edge loops. I'll select these two. Turn off enable axes so that we are editing the physical geometry itself. And I can drag these points up so that this starts to have a little bit more of a curve to it. Kind of can curve to someone who is sitting there. We can also bevel these with MS. And you can choose how many times you'd like to subdivide this bevel, and that'll decide how smooth it is. You can also dissolve geometry if you feel like you don't need the extra geometry there. These areas are flat, so we can right click and choose dissolve, and it will basically delete those polygons. So now this plane is still flat. It doesn't have any kind of thickness to it. It has zero thickness. So we will need to fix that. So I went back into object mode. I have our plane selected. And I'll hold down Control to drag and duplicate this surface. And you can see how far I'm dragging this surface. So we can choose the thickness right here. You can decide, do you want this to be sheet metal that we're sitting on? Do you want it to be plywood? I like the idea of plywood, so that'd be about a 1/2 inch thickness. And if you want to get really accurate, you can just copy and paste it. Go into the coordinates and move it down 0.5 by subtracting 0.5 inches, or however many inches you'd like. And now with that done, we can connect these. So what I'll do is use U to bring up the selection keys and then choose L, and that stands for loop. Make sure that I'm in edge mode, and I will select all of the perimeter edges around this surface, both surfaces, the top and the bottom, that we are going to stitch and sew together in just a moment. So now with all of these selected, now we can click M, which is for modeling tool hotkeys. M and P, you'll see P stands for stitch and sew as the hotkey. They're all listed here. And you'll notice that if you just drag these two together, it creates almost like this clamshell effect where they meet. But we don't want to do that. We want there to be actual thickness between them and a surface between them. So instead, what we're going to do is hit undo and hold down shift while we drag from one surface to the other. And now you'll see that we have a closed surface that is put together. It's stitched and sewn together and is one closed form, which is our goal. I strongly suggest that as you're modeling, just select some polygons, make sure that they're all orange. If any of them are purple, like here, that means that this is the back side of a polygon. So we'll need to reverse those normals because there is a front and a back to a polygon. And the back side, when you select it, it'll show up as purple. The front side will show up as orange. So this is really easy to fix. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and use UL in polygon mode. And I'm going to select this edge here, and you'll notice that we just selected that entire poly loop. And what we really want to do is select this purple section in here. So the way we can do that is using U for selection keys and then F for fill, and that'll allow us to fill in an area as a selection. So I clicked in the center there and now it's selected. Now I can right click on it, hit reverse normals. The hotkey for that is UR. It is listed down here, reverse normals. And now it is orange. Now our geometry is all going the right way. And if you're familiar with plywood, as this chair is a plywood chair, you'll know that we usually sand the edges in order to create a nice bevel along plywood. So in order to do that, we're going to add some bevels. UL to select these loops, because we just need to select those exterior edges. Once they're all selected, we can use MS for the beveling tool, and we can begin to bevel the surface, and you can choose how much you'd like to bevel it. And you can even select the distance in here. Going to create the bevel to be in about 1/8 inch. And I'll make the subdivision a little bit less. 7 seems like a lot. So you can adjust the number of subdivisions. That's how many segments there are in your bevel. And now it's nice and rounded on all of the edges. So right now I'm feeling like this needs some more support underneath it. This bar needs an apron. I'd like to create that with a tube. And by default, this tube is pretty large. Going to take down its outer radius to 10 right now just to make it smaller and easier to work with. I'll scale it down further. So we have a couple options with this apron. We can have it intersect the legs, we can have it be on the inside of the legs or on the outside of the legs. It really depends on your design and what you're going for. I'm going to adjust the height to about 2 inches. Bring this up here. I'll increase the rotation segments so that they're nice and rounded. You can choose the outer radius and inner radius. Right now this is 1 inch thick, which is a lot. So I'm going to adjust this to 6.5. Works for right now, and now it's a little bit thinner. And this feels like it's beginning to take shape. I'd like to adjust this a little bit further with a taper, so I'm going to use this deformer here on the tube. Under Object, I'm going to choose Fit to Parent, and that'll scale our deformer to our parent. And we can increase the strength to see what effect this is having. And you'll see it's giving a little bit of a curve. I don't really want the curve, so I can take down the curvature to 0%, and now we have a straight line. And now I can pretty much line up that angle with the angle of the legs. I think I'd like this tube to be a little bit bigger. So as you work, you might need to adjust your dimensions some, and that's totally okay. So this is looking better to me. I like the simplistic shape of the stool. If you'd like, you can even add some little feet on the bottom here. I don't think they need to be as detailed. We could even decide we're going to use a hemisphere for them. I'll make this about an inch. And now the cool thing about this is we've already created this cloner, and we can just put this hemisphere within the cloner. Adjust the radius some, and we'll know that these feet will line up pretty much perfectly with the legs. Maybe they could be metal. So right now this sphere, we made it a hemisphere, but it's open on the bottom, which I don't like. So just for right now, I'm going to make this editable, use MD, and that is for close polygon hole. And we can just close that hole right there. And turn back on our cloner, and now we have some nice feet for our chair.
I hope you really enjoyed today's tutorial. If you did, please give me a like and a subscribe. The next episode, I'm going to go over how to create the hardware and some of the joints for the chair as well. So if you want this chair to be more realistic and actually show how it goes together, we'll be doing that on the next episode, and I hope you'll stay tuned for that.